Talk to you about this book. You have some knowledge of, information of what happened behind the scenes because you were there. So listen, in this new book, according to the Associated Press, James Comey writes about his first meeting with Trump after the election in January, and you were at that meeting. Comey says after you briefed the Trump team on the Russian election interference, he was taken aback by what the Trump team didn't ask. And here's what he writes before I get your response. They were about to lead a country that had been attacked by a foreign adversary, yet they had no questions about what the future Russian threat might be. Instead, he writes, they launched into a strategy session about how to spin what we just told them for the public. Is that your recollection?
Yes, it is, Don. That is accurate. In fact, Reince Priebus, who was then the Chief of Staff designate, this was on the 6th of January during our briefing at Trump Tower, even before we left the room, he's starting to draft a public release on the briefing, and wanted to make the point that what we said was that the Russian interference had no impact on the outcome of the election, which was just not true. And we had to remind him of that a couple times. That he really couldn't say that. What we did say in our report was that we saw no evidence of meddling with voter tallies, which is quite different. And that's not to say there wasn't meddling. We just didn't have any evidence of it. But it was way beyond the charter, the capabilities, and the authority of the intelligence community to gauge what impact the Russian meddling had on the electorate. But they were concerned about this, and the president-elect, and he's been consistent about this ever since. It's all about casting doubt on the legitimacy of his election, and that's the way he took our report. And dwelling on what a threat the Russians are, well, that may as well have been on another planet.
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to give another excerpt. This one, directors obtained by CNN. Comey writes, Trump brought up the dossier compiled by the former British intelligence officer. That dossier alleged that Russians had so-called, I can't believe I'm saying this, golden showers tape, a golden showers tape involving prostitutes. And then Comey writes, as he said, he brought up what he called the golden showers thing, adding that it bothered him if there was even a 1% chance his wife Melania thought it was true. And then according to the paper, according to the Washington Post, Comey goes on to write this. He says, in an apparent play for my sympathy, Trump said that he has a beautiful wife and the whole thing has been very painful for her. He asked what we could do to lift the cloud. Is that an appropriate request to an FBI director?
Well, no, it isn't. I mean, this is, let's use the FBI to get me out of trouble, out of the doghouse with my wife, which is, improper use of, by any measure, a capability like the FBI. I will tell you, though, that I didn't have that kind of detailed conversation with then President-elect Trump about the infamous dossier, but I do know he's preoccupied with it because when I called him on the 11th of January, 5 days after our briefing, to complain about referring to the intelligence community as Nazis, since he blamed us for, for having released the dossier. And once again, his major interest was asking me to put out a public statement saying that the dossier was, was all phony and all that. And I couldn't do that and wouldn't do it.
And there have been aspects of the dossier, not the salacious parts, that have been corroborated, right?
Absolutely. In fact, there were some parts of it that were actually corroborated in our intelligence community assessment. But to be clear, we did not draw on the dossier at all for what went into our intelligence community assessment, which we had, very high confidence level. And
which is also which is a talking point of the Trump White House and conservative media, that the entire, the genesis of the Russia investigation was a dossier, and you say no.
No, and again, not all of it. Bear in mind what the dossier is. It's a collection of 17 separate memos, which I would equate to what we would do as first instance reporting. And some of it was corroborated, some of it isn't. Some of
Yeah.
it's been corroborated since our intelligence community.
Well, let me ask you this.
assessment.
It's also, why does he, because he seems fixated on this, and again, Comey brings it up, on this, the salacious parts of the dossier. I don't want to say that term again. Why does he want to say that something that he believes is not true, that he wants to keep talking about it, and he wants Comey to help him with that?
Well, I don't know, but it does conjure up, thou dost protest too loudly. You wonder why he's
He
so
denied the
preoccupied
tape
with it.
ever existed. So, but he keeps bringing it up.
Exactly. So why is that? Well, I won't profess to speculate, but it's very curious. And again, what comes to my mind is, thou dost protest too loudly.
So another excerpt, Director, from the Washington Post discusses a February 2017 Oval Office meeting. That's where Trump asked Attorney General Jeff Sessions to clear the room so he could bring up the FBI investigation of the former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn directly with
Right.
Comey. And then Comey recalls later confronting Sessions, whom he describes as both overwhelmed and overmatched by the job. And according to the book, it says, "You can't be kicked out of a room so he can talk to me alone. You can't be kicked out of the room so you can talk to me alone," Comey told Sessions. "You have to be between me and the president." But this was a key event in Mueller's investigation into obstruction of justice. What's your thought on this?
Well, it's crucial, and one of the FBI is a pretty autonomous organization, but it is in the Department of Justice. And there are times when the Attorney General must give top cover to the Director of the FBI or any of the other law enforcement components that are in the Department of Justice. And I think for lots of reasons, the Attorney General didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. And I think he probably was relieved that he could skate out of the Oval and not be involved in that conversation. And by the way, I can personally attest, the number of one-on-one conversations I had with President Obama, I could count on one hand and not use all my fingers. And believe me, you remember every word that goes on. And I have every confidence that Jim Comey accurately copied, collected, or recounted what exactly went on during those discussions.
Is this for the director that you guys haven't prompted? You want me to ask him this? No?
I'm sorry?
No?
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry,
All right.
Don.
I wasn't sure. It was about Scooter Libby, and I wasn't sure if they wanted me to ask you about Scooter Libby, but we'll save it for the next block. Director, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Don, if I could, just one quick comment.
Absolutely, go on.
I completely agree with something you said in the last segment. Among all the shouting there, it is indeed a privilege to be on this platform, and that's the way I regard it.
Thank you very much. Listen, for the last 2.5 years, or however long it's been, people are not telling the truth. They're being disingenuous, and they're feeding this to the American people. I don't think that's right. I think the American people deserve better, and instead of informing people about the truth and what's happening, I spend most of my time on the people who have deflected, trying to get them back on track, or trying to debunk something that they have either flat out lied about, or there's a half-truth. So I don't know. It's tough. And Director, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.